The alarm bells rang through the mining station on Velthera Prime. Chief Administrator Zexhai ran down the metal hallways as fast as his 4 legs could carry him. His green skin was covered in sweat, and his large eyes showed pure terror. Behind him, explosions shook the entire building. "Sir, the eastern sector is gone," shouted Communications Officer Velmar as Zexhai entered the command center. "The bugs ate through our defenses in less than 2 hours." Zexhai looked at the main screen. Red dots covered half the planet. Each dot was a place where the Kithera had landed and started eating everything. The insect creatures consumed metal, plants, animals, and even the ground itself. They turned everything into more of their kind. "How many ships do we have left?" Zexhai asked. 7 cargo ships and 2 patrol boats," Velmar replied. "The rest are either destroyed or trapped on the surface." Zexhai closed his eyes. 3 days ago, Velthera Prime had been a peaceful mining world. 12,000 people lived and worked here. They dug up rare metals from the planet's crust and sent them across the galaxy. The Veltharians were not fighters. They had never needed to be. "Sir, incoming message from the Galactic Defense Council," another officer called out. Zexhai's heart sank. He knew what they would say. The same thing they had said to 17 other worlds in the past year. The Defense Council was busy. They had their own problems. Help would come eventually, but not in time. "Play it," he said. A blue hologram appeared in the center of the room. General Korthvan, a tall reptilian creature, looked tired. "Administrator Zexhai, we have received your distress call. Unfortunately, our forces are currently engaged in multiple conflicts across the rim worlds. We estimate relief forces will reach your system in approximately 32 standard rotations." Zexhai felt sick. 32 rotations meant more than 2 months. The Kithera would consume the entire planet in less than 2 days. "However," the general continued, "we authorize you to broadcast an open distress call to any available military forces in your sector. May the stars guide you." The message ended. The room fell silent except for the sound of distant explosions. Everyone knew what 32 rotations meant. They would all be dead long before help arrived. "Sir," Velmar said quietly, "there is one option." Zexhai looked at him. "What option?" "We could send a wideband distress call, not just to the Defense Council, but to everyone. Every species, every government, even the pirates and mercenaries." "And who would answer? Who would risk their ships and crews for a mining world full of strangers?" Velmar hesitated. "I don't know, sir, but doing nothing means certain death." Another explosion rocked the station. Through the windows they could see fires burning across the main city. Black smoke rose into the orange sky. "Do it," Zexhai said. "Send the message to everyone." Velmar worked quickly at his console. "What should I say?" Zexhai thought for a moment. "Say this. To any sentient species capable of military action. Our world is under attack by a Kithera swarm. We have approximately 47 standard hours before total consumption. We offer our entire planetary mining rights and all our resources. To anyone who can help us, please, we have 12,000 souls here, including 2,000 younglings." The message went out into space at the speed of light. It would reach the nearest systems in a few hours. The furthest systems would get it in days, but they would be dead by then. Hours passed. The Kithera continued their advance. The eastern and northern continents were completely overrun. The bugs had started landing on the southern continent where most of the population lived. "Any responses?" Zexhai asked every few minutes. "Negative, sir," was always the answer. Then, as the local sun was setting, something changed. "Sir, I'm getting a response," Velmar called out excitedly. "From who? The Defense Council? The Terran Republic? The Altarian Fleet?" "No, sir. It's from a species called humans." Zexhai had never heard of humans. "Where are they from?" "A system called Sol. Their world is called Earth." "Sir, they're asking for tactical information about the Kithera forces." "How many ships do they have?" Velmar checked his screen. "They're sending coordinates for 21 vessels. 21 ships, against a Kithera swarm of over 300 vessels. Zexhai almost laughed, but he was too tired and scared. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them we appreciate their courage, but 21 ships cannot defeat 300 Cathara vessels." A few minutes later, another message arrived. This one came with a voice transmission. The words were translated by the station's computer, but the voice behind them was strange. It was deeper than most species, with odd rhythms. "Administrator Zexhai, this is Admiral Kate Morrison of the Human Earth Defense Corps. We have reviewed your tactical situation. We are currently 12 hours out from your system. Please provide evacuation sites for your population." "Evacuation sites?" Zexhai asked the empty air. "In 12 hours, there won't be any safe evacuation sites." He activated the transmitter. "Admiral Morrison, we are grateful for your response. However, you should know that a Cathara swarm of this size has never been defeated. Perhaps you should reconsider." The reply came back quickly. "Administrator, you asked for rescue. We don't abandon rescue missions." There was something in that translated voice, something that made Zexhai's skin tingle. He had heard confidence before, but this was different. This was certainty. "Belmar, what do we know? About humans?" His communications officer searched the Galactic databases. "Very little, sir. They're from a Class 12 death world." Zexhai's eyes widened. Class 12 was the highest rating for planetary danger. Most intelligent species evolved on Class 3 or 4 worlds. Class 12 meant a planet so hostile that survival required extreme adaptations. "They're new to galactic politics," Velmar continued reading. "First contact was only 50 years ago. They've been involved in a few small conflicts, but nothing major. The other species call them Deathworlders." "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure, sir. The translation is unclear, but there are reports that other species find them unsettling." Another explosion, much closer this time. The Cathara had reached the capital city. Through the windows they could see the insect creatures swarming through the streets. Each Cathara was the size of a ground vehicle, with razor-sharp claws and mandibles that could cut through steel. "Sir, the humans are requesting permission to enter our system," Velmar reported. "Granted," Zexhai said. What else could he say? 6 hours later, the human fleet arrived. Zexhai watched on the long-range sensors as 21 small dots appeared at the edge of the system. The Cathara swarm immediately began moving to intercept them, 300 vessels against 21. "Admiral Morrison," Zexhai transmitted. "The Cathara are moving toward you. You still have time to retreat." "Negative, Administrator. We're beginning our approach. Recommend you move your remaining population to the underground shelters in Grid 7. Zexhai wanted to argue, but something in the human's voice stopped him. Instead, he gave the evacuation order. As he watched the sensors, he saw something that made no sense. The human ships were not retreating. They were not even staying together for mutual defense. Instead, they were spreading out and moving toward the Cathara swarm at high speed. "What are they doing?" he whispered. "I don't know, sir," Velmar replied. "But I'm reading weapons charging on all human vessels." The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy what humans could do. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the battleship New Frontier, watching the tactical display. The Cathara swarm looked like a massive cloud of angry insects spread across space. Each red dot on his screen was a ship bigger than his own vessel. He had never seen so many enemy ships in one place. "Captain Murphy, what's your count?" Sullivan asked into his headset. "I'm showing 312 Cathara vessels," came the reply from the destroyer Lightning. "Smallest ones are cruiser class. Biggest ones are the size of space stations." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes checked her instruments from the reconnaissance ship Swift Arrow. She was flying closer to the enemy than anyone else, taking detailed scans of their formations. "Admiral, the bugs are moving like a school of fish," she reported. "They're all turning at the same time, all accelerating together. It's like they're all controlled by one brain." Admiral Kate Morrison nodded. She had read every report about the Cathara in the ship's computer during the 12-hour journey. The insect creatures were a hive mind. Individual Cathara could not think for themselves. They all followed the commands of larger creatures called queens, who in turn followed an even larger creature called the prime. That's their strength. Morrison said over the fleet communication channel. But it's also their weakness. They can't adapt quickly to unexpected tactics. Captain Ryan Murphy was studying the enemy formation from his destroyer. The Kithra ships were arranged in a perfect sphere, with the largest vessels in the center, and smaller ones on the outside. It was a formation designed to protect the command ships while bringing maximum firepower to bear on any threat. "Admiral, they're using standard defensive formation 7, Murphy reported. By the book. No creativity." Morrison smiled. Humans had never fought by any book except the ones they wrote themselves. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Break into attack groups now." The human fleet suddenly scattered. In 7 different directions. The new frontier led the main attack group straight toward the center of the Kithra formation. The Lightning and 3 other destroyers curved around to attack from the left. 2 more groups went right and above. The remaining ships dove below the enemy formation. On Velthara Prime, Administrator Zexhai watched the tactical display with confusion. "What are they doing?" he asked his communications officer. "They're splitting their tiny fleet into even smaller pieces. The Kithra will destroy them one group at a time." But something strange was happening on the Kithra display. The perfect sphere formation was starting to change shape. Parts of the swarm were turning to face different human attack groups. Other parts were trying to maintain the original formation. The result was chaos. "The bugs don't know which group to focus on," Velmar observed. "They're trying to respond to all 7 attacks at once." The first human weapons fired when they were still far from the enemy. Missiles streaked across space, toward the Kithra ships. But these were not normal missiles. They separated into dozens of smaller warheads, each one seeking a different target. The Kithra point defense systems opened fire, destroying many of the incoming missiles. But they could not stop them all. Explosions bloomed across the outer edge of the swarm. "Direct hits on 15 enemy vessels," reported Lisa Hayes from her reconnaissance ship. "Moderate damage to most targets." But the missiles had done something more important than cause damage. They had forced the Kithra to reveal their defensive capabilities. Now the humans knew exactly how the bug ships would react to attacks. "Captain." Danny Wright commanded a squadron of 6 destroyers attacking from below the enemy formation. He watched as the Kithra ships turned their weapons toward his small force. "All ships execute Wright's maneuver," he ordered. The 6 destroyers suddenly changed direction, flying in a complex spiral pattern that brought them closer together while making them harder to target. The Kithra weapons fired at where the human ships had been, not where they were going. Wright had developed this tactic during training exercises back in human space. He called it herding, using small, fast ships to make larger enemy forces move in predictable ways. The Kithra ships chasing his destroyers were now out of position to defend the main formation. "Admiral, I've got a gap in their left flank," Wright reported. "Recommend main assault through Grid 7. Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. "All groups, focus fire on Grid 7. Punch through their line." The human weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. While other species used energy beams or plasma cannons, humans preferred solid projectiles fired at incredible speeds. Their railguns could punch through the thickest armor, and their missiles carried warheads designed to cause maximum internal damage. 3 Kithra cruisers exploded in the first coordinated assault. The human ships poured through the gap before the enemy could respond. Dr. Helen Clark worked frantically at her science station aboard the New Frontier. As the fleet's chief scientist, her job was to learn everything possible about the enemy during the battle. "Admiral, I'm detecting strange electromagnetic patterns from the Kithra ships," she reported. "It looks like they're communicating using bioelectric fields." "Can we disrupt those communications?" Morrison asked. "Give me 10 minutes," Dr. Clark replied, already working on the problem. Meanwhile, the battle was becoming more intense. The Kithra had recovered from their initial confusion and were fighting back with massive firepower. The human ship Thunder took a direct hit from a Kithra plasma cannon and lost its main engines. "Thunder to Fleet Command," came the strained voice of Captain Tom Bradley. "We're dead in space but still have weapons. We'll keep firing as long as we can." 2 more human ships were damaged, but they continued fighting. Admiral Morrison had trained her crews for this. Human ships were built to keep fighting even when badly damaged. Human crews were trained to never give up. The Kythera, on the other hand, had never faced an enemy that fought like this. When their ships were damaged, they either retreated for repairs or were abandoned. They had never seen crews continue fighting from a crippled vessel. "Admiral, the jamming system is ready," Dr. Clark announced. "Do it," Morrison ordered. Communications Officer Pete Johnson activated the new jamming array. Invisible electromagnetic waves poured out from the human ships, designed to match and interfere with the Kythera bioelectric communications. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Kythera formation, which had been moving like a single organism, suddenly fell apart. Individual ships began moving in different directions. Some continued attacking while others tried to retreat. Several enemy vessels actually collided with each other. "It's working," Lisa Hayes shouted over the communication channel. "The bugs can't talk to each other anymore." But the Kythera adapted quickly. Their queens began using backup communication methods, and the swarm started to reorganize. However, they had lost precious time and several more ships. Commander Nathan Brooks led a boarding party from the assault ship Marine's Pride. His job was to capture a Kythera vessel intact so the humans could learn more about their enemy. "Boarding. Team Alpha, prepare for entry," Brooks announced as his ship locked onto a damaged Kythera cruiser. The human Marines cut through the alien hull and entered the enemy ship. What they found inside was like nothing they had ever seen. The corridors were organic, made of some kind of living material that pulsed like a heartbeat. Strange sounds echoed through the passages. "Stay alert," Brooks warned his team. "We don't know what we'll find in here." They found Kythera warriors waiting for them. The insect creatures were 3 meters tall, with razor-sharp claws and mandibles. But the humans had trained for close combat in confined spaces. Their weapons and tactics were perfectly suited for fighting inside enemy ships. Sergeant Alex Turner used a flame weapon to clear a corridor full of Kythera drones. Private Maria Santos threw explosive charges that collapsed tunnel entrances, trapping enemy reinforcements. The Marines fought their way deeper into the alien vessel. Back in space, the main battle continued. The human fleet had lost 2 ships completely, and several others were badly damaged. But they had destroyed or disabled over 30 Kythera vessels. More importantly, they had proven that the insect swarm could be beaten. "Admiral Morrison to Velthera Prime," the human commander transmitted. "We're making progress, but this is going to take time. Keep your people in the shelters." Administrator Zexhai could barely believe what he was seeing. The tiny human fleet was actually winning against impossible odds. But he also saw that the humans were paying a heavy price for their victory. "Admiral, your crews are fighting with incredible courage," he transmitted back. "But you're taking heavy losses. Perhaps you should consider withdrawing." Morrison's reply came back immediately. "Administrator, we came here to rescue your people. We don't retreat from rescue missions." The battle for Velthera Prime was far from over, but one thing had become clear to everyone watching. The humans were unlike any species the galaxy had ever seen. They fought not just to win, but to protect others, even strangers they had never met. The Deathworlders had come to save the day. Sergeant Alex Turner kicked down the broken door of the Kythera command chamber. Behind him, 12 human Marines followed with their weapons ready. The inside of the alien ship was dark and humid, filled with strange organic growths that seemed to breathe. "Movement ahead," whispered Corporal Sam Davis, pointing down a tunnel that curved out of sight. Turner nodded and signaled for his team to spread out. Fighting inside enemy ships was nothing like the space battles outside. Here, every corner could hide death. Every shadow could contain an enemy waiting to strike. The Marines had trained for this kind of combat on Earth. They had practiced in abandoned buildings, underground tunnels, and tight spaces where normal tactics would not work. Now they were using those same skills against alien monsters. A Kythera warrior suddenly appeared from a side passage. The creature was huge, with forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. Its mandibles clicked together as it charged toward Private Tony Miller. Miller rolled to the side and fired his weapon at close range. The explosive rounds tore through the creature's armored shell. Green blood splattered across the organic walls. "Keep moving," Turner ordered. We need to reach their command center before they can destroy their computers. The Marines advanced deeper into the ship. They had studied the layout of captured Kythera vessels and knew that all important systems would be in the center, protected by multiple layers of defenders. Another group of Kythera blocked their path. These were smaller than the warriors, but moved much faster. They scuttled along the walls and ceiling like giant spiders. "Flame units, clear the passage," Turner commanded. Private Maria Santos stepped forward with her flame weapon. A stream of burning chemicals shot out, filling the corridor with fire. The Kythera creatures screamed and fell from the walls, their bodies burning. The smell was terrible, but the Marines had smelled worse things during their training on Earth. They moved through the smoking passage without stopping. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Danny Wright was executing a maneuver that had never been tried in real combat. His 6 destroyers were working together to surround a Kythera command ship that was 3 times larger than all his vessels combined. "All ships pattern Delta," Wright ordered into his headset. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy it. We're trying to capture it." The human destroyers began flying in a complex spiral around the enemy vessel. Each ship fired at precise intervals, targeting the Kythera ship's engines and weapons, but avoiding areas that might contain important equipment. The Kythera tried to fight back, but their large ship could not turn fast enough to track the smaller human vessels. Wright had learned this tactic by studying how wolves hunted much larger prey on Earth. Surround the target, attack from all sides, and never give it a chance to fight back effectively. "Captain, their main engines are down," reported Lieutenant Jenny Ross from the destroyer Swift. "Good. Now target their communication arrays," Wright replied. One by one, the human ships disabled the Kythera vessel systems. The giant alien ship drifted helplessly in space, unable to run or fight. Back on the new frontier, Dr. Helen Clark was making discoveries that would change how humans understood their enemy. The jamming system she had created was working better than expected. The Kythera were having trouble coordinating their attacks. "Admiral, I'm reading massive confusion in their formations," she reported to Admiral Morrison. "Without their bioelectric communications, they're fighting like separate ships instead of one big organism." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Kythera swarm was indeed falling apart. Groups of enemy ships were moving in different directions, often getting in each other's way. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Morrison. The enemy is vulnerable right now. Press your attacks. Don't give them time to adapt." Commander Jake Sullivan led his cruiser squadron against a group of Kythera heavy vessels. The enemy ships were powerful, but they were no longer working together effectively. "Target their lead ship," Sullivan ordered his weapons officer. "Full missile spread." 20 missiles streaked toward the Kythera vessel. The alien ship's defense systems shot down most of them, but 3 got through. The explosions tore holes in the enemy's hull, venting atmosphere into space. "Direct hit," reported Lieutenant Carl Stone. "Enemy vessel is losing power." But Sullivan was already targeting the next ship. In human military doctrine, you never gave a wounded enemy time to recover. You kept attacking until the threat was completely eliminated. The battle was turning into something the galaxy had never seen before. Most space conflicts were fought at long range, with ships firing energy weapons at each other from safe distances. The humans were fighting up close, using tactics that seemed crazy to other species. Captain Ryan Murphy brought his destroyer Lightning so close to a Kythera cruiser that their hulls almost touched. At that range, the enemy's large weapons could not target his small ship, but Murphy's weapons could tear the bigger vessel apart from the inside. "Fire everything," Murphy ordered. The Lightning's guns fired directly into the Kythera ship's hull. Explosions rippled along the enemy vessel as internal systems failed. Within minutes, the alien cruiser was a burning wreck. On Velthara Prime, Administrator Zexhai watched the battle with amazement. The humans were not just fighting to win, they were fighting in ways that showed they understood war better than any species he had ever heard of. "Sir, I'm getting reports from our sensors," Communications Officer Velmar announced. "The humans are using at least 12 different attack patterns simultaneously. I've never seen anything like it." Zexhai nodded. The Galactic Defense Council used 3 basic formations and 5 standard attack patterns. They had developed these tactics over centuries of careful study. The humans seemed to be inventing new tactics during the battle itself. Inside the captured Kythera ship, Sergeant Turner's team had reached their objective. The command center was a large chamber filled with organic computers that pulsed with strange lights. Kythera technicians worked at stations that looked more like living creatures than machines. "Secure the room," Turner ordered. The Marines quickly eliminated the alien technicians and began setting up their equipment. Corporal Lisa Park, the team's computer specialist, connected human devices to the alien systems. "I'm getting data streams," Park reported. "This is incredible. Their entire computer network is biological. It actually thinks like a living brain." Turner activated his communication device. "Command, this is Boarding Team Alpha. We have captured a Kythera command center. Beginning data extraction now." The information they were downloading would give humanity its first detailed look at how the Kythera operated. Battle plans, ship designs, communication codes, and most importantly, the location of their main staging areas. But the biggest discovery was yet to come. As Park worked to decode the alien files, she found something that made her call Turner over to her station. "Sergeant, you need to see this," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "I found their target list." Turner looked at the translated data on Park's screen. The Kythera were not just randomly attacking planets. They had a plan, a list of worlds to consume in a specific order. Velthera Prime was just the beginning. "How many worlds?" Turner asked. "Over 200, Park replied, including several major population centers. "If they succeed here, they're planning to attack the Centauri colonies next, then the Altarian home system." Turner felt cold. The Kythera were not just attacking one mining world, they were beginning a campaign to consume entire sectors of the galaxy. "Upload everything to the fleet," he ordered. "Command needs to see this immediately." In space, the battle was reaching its climax. The human fleet had destroyed or disabled over half the Kythera swarm, but they had paid a heavy price. 3 human ships were destroyed and most of the others were damaged. Admiral Morrison received the data from Turner's team and immediately understood what it meant. This was not just a rescue mission anymore. This was the opening battle of a much larger war. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," she transmitted to her fleet. "We have new intelligence about enemy intentions. The Kythera are planning to attack over 200 worlds. We cannot let any of their ships escape to report back to their main force." The surviving Kythera were trying to retreat, but the humans pursued them relentlessly. Captain Wright's destroyers chased down fleeing enemy vessels. Commander Sullivan's cruisers blocked escape routes. Even damaged human ships continued fighting. The last Kythera ship was destroyed 6 hours after the battle began. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to carry word back to their main force. Admiral Morrison surveyed the aftermath. Her fleet was battered but victorious. More importantly, they had captured enough intelligence to understand the true scope of the Kythera threat. The Deathworlders had won their first major battle, but they all knew this was just the beginning. 3 hours after the last Kythera ship was destroyed above Velthera Prime, Admiral Morrison received the long-range sensor reports she had been dreading. 3 more Kythera swarms were moving toward nearby systems. Each one was even larger than the force they had just defeated. "Admiral, the closest swarm is heading for New Geneva," reported Communications Officer Pete Johnson. "They have 4 million civilians there. The next target appears to be the Arcturus station, and the third swarm is moving toward the Vega colonies." Morrison studied the tactical display in her command center. Her fleet was damaged and running low on ammunition. Half her ships needed major repairs. The smart move would be to return to human space and wait for reinforcements. But the intelligence they had captured from the Kythera command ship showed that waiting was not an option. The bug creatures had massive reinforcements coming from outside the galaxy. If they established bases in these 3 systems, they could launch attacks across dozens of worlds before any galactic defense could stop them. "All ship commanders, report to the new frontier immediately," Morrison ordered. "We have decisions to make." Within an hour, the surviving human commanders had gathered in the Admiral's briefing room. They were tired, dirty, and some were wounded, but their eyes still showed the fire that had driven them to victory. Commander Jake Sullivan spoke first. "Admiral, my ships can fight, but we're down to 30% ammunition. If we engage another swarm this size, we won't have enough firepower for a sustained battle." Captain Ryan Murphy nodded. "The Lightning took heavy damage to her main engines. We can still maneuver, but not at full speed." Captain Danny Wright looked at the tactical data. "The New Geneva system has no defensive forces at all. 4 million people and nothing to protect them but cargo ships and passenger transports." Dr. Helen Clark had been working non-stop to analyze the captured Kithra data. "Admiral, I've found something important. The 3 incoming swarms are not independent forces. They're all controlled by a single command structure on a mobile base, called a hive station. If we can locate and destroy that station, all 3 swarms will lose coordination." Morrison leaned forward. "Where is this hive station?" "Unknown, but I can track the communication signals. Give me 12 hours with the right equipment and I can find it." Colonel Tim Garcia, commander of the Marine Forces, stood up. "Admiral, my teams have studied the captured Kithra data. We know their ship layouts now, we know their tactics. If we can get close enough, we can board their command vessels and take them from the inside." Morrison looked around the room. Every commander was wounded, tired, and outgunned. Their ships were damaged and their ammunition was running low. Any reasonable military force would retreat and call for help. "Gentlemen," Morrison said quietly, "we swore an oath to protect innocent lives. Those 4 million people on New Geneva didn't ask for this war, but they're going to die if we don't act. The question is simple. Do we retreat and let them die, or do we find a way to win against impossible odds?" The room was silent for a moment. Then Commander Sullivan smiled. "Admiral, impossible odds are what humans do best." The others nodded in agreement. Captain Murphy began working on tactical plans. Dr. Clark returned to her analysis of the Kithra data. Colonel Garcia started preparing his Marines for more boarding actions. Morrison felt proud of her officers. They were choosing to fight not for glory or conquest, but to save strangers they had never met. This was what made humans different from other species in the galaxy. The human fleet split into 3 groups. Morrison led the main force toward New Geneva, where the largest Kithra swarm was heading. Commander Sullivan took 4 ships toward Arcturus Station. Captain Wright led the remaining vessels to protect the Vega colonies. The journey to New Geneva took 18 hours at maximum speed. During the trip, the human crews worked frantically to repair their ships and prepare for battle. They welded armor plates over holes in their hulls. They rebuilt damaged weapon systems using spare parts from destroyed equipment. They even converted cargo containers into improvised missile launchers. Major Samantha Lee coordinated the defense preparations on New Geneva itself. The planet had no military forces, but it did have mining equipment that could be converted into weapons. Lee worked with local engineers to turn construction vehicles into mobile missile platforms and mining lasers into defensive guns. "We're not going to win this battle with conventional tactics," Lee explained to the local government leaders. "We're going to turn your entire planet into a weapon." The Kithra arrived at New Geneva 6 hours ahead of schedule. Over 400 enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began their attack on the planet. But something was different this time. The humans were ready for them. Mining stations in the asteroid belt opened fire with converted industrial lasers. Cargo ships that had been secretly loaded with explosives rammed into Kithra vessels. Even civilian transports had been armed with improvised weapons. Admiral Morrison brought her battle group in from behind the enemy formation. The Kithra had expected to find a defenseless world. Instead, they found themselves caught between armed defenders on the planet and human warships in space. "All ships execute Plan Gamma," Morrison ordered. The human vessels spread out and began what Morrison called guerrilla warfare in space. Instead of fighting in formation, each ship acted independently, hitting enemy targets and then disappearing before the Kithra could respond. Captain Joe Martinez commanded the cruiser Defiant, one of the most damaged ships in the fleet. His own vessel had lost half its weapons and most of its armor, but Martinez had an idea that would make his ship more dangerous than ever. "All hands prepare for ramming speed," Martinez announced over the ship's communication system. His crew looked at him with surprise, but they followed orders. The Defiant accelerated directly toward a Kythera command ship that was 10 times larger. At the last moment, Martinez fired every remaining weapon his ship had, then activated the emergency evacuation pods. The Defiant struck the enemy vessel at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also created a massive debris field that damaged several other Kythera vessels. Martinez and most of his crew survived in the evacuation pods and were rescued by other human ships. Dr. Clark, working from her laboratory on the New Frontier, finally located the Kythera hive station. It was hiding in a nebula 50 light-years away, protected by the cloud of gas and dust that made sensor readings difficult. "Admiral, I found their command base," she reported, "but it's heavily defended. I'm reading over 100 ships guarding the station." Morrison made a decision that would be talked about in military academies for generations. Instead of continuing the defensive battles at 3 different systems, she would take the fight directly to the enemy's main base. All human forces. This is Admiral Morrison. We're going to end this war the way humans end wars. We're going to attack their home base. The message went out to all 3 battle groups. Every human ship, no matter how damaged, began moving toward the coordinates Dr. Clark had provided. They would converge on the hive station and destroy it, even if it meant sacrificing themselves in the process. Commander Sullivan received the message while fighting Kythera forces near Arcturus Station. His ships were outnumbered 5-1, but they had managed to hold the enemy away from the civilian population. "All ships break off engagement," Sullivan ordered. "We're going hunting." Captain Wright got the same message while defending the Vega colonies. His destroyers had been fighting a running battle against overwhelming odds for 6 hours. His crews were exhausted and his ships were nearly out of ammunition. "Set course for the nebula," Wright commanded. "Time to finish this." The 3 human battle groups met at the edge of the nebula 12 hours later. Morrison looked at her combined fleet on the tactical display. 18 ships, most of them damaged, against a fortress defended by over 100 enemy vessels. Colonel Garcia prepared his Marines for what he knew would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. They would have to fight their way through the hive station and destroy the central command system that controlled all Kythera forces in this part of the galaxy. "Marines, we're going into the heart of enemy territory," Garcia told his troops. "Some of us might not come back, but if we succeed, we'll save millions of innocent lives across dozens of worlds." The Marines checked their weapons and equipment one final time. They had learned to fight the Kythera in close combat. Now they would use that knowledge to strike at the very heart of the enemy's power. Admiral Morrison gave the order that would begin the final battle. "All ships, advance into the nebula. It's time to show these bugs what humans can do when they're really angry." The damaged human fleet moved forward into the swirling clouds of gas and dust, heading toward a battle that would determine the fate of countless worlds.